I'm done. I'm fucking done. I'm done trying to figure this out. I'm done wasting my fucking time going back and forth in circles, waiting hours, days, weeks, months even, just getting absolutely nowhere as I run laps in my own head. I'm just absolutely fucking done. Usually when you start a podcast of some kind, you have a game plan of some sort. You kind of think you know what you're going to do. You have some structure in mind, something. I'm just saying, fuck it. I'm hitting the record button and we're just going to move. We're just going to go. We'll figure it out as we go along. It's gotta be awful, and it doesn't necessarily always get better, but if there's a chance of it getting better, it's gotta be awful first. And it's hilarious. It's just, where the fuck am I even going with this? What am I even, like, what is my point? My point, this is a podcast, and I've realized at some point that, there's a lot of projects and things and ideas, and I want to get these ideas out in different ways, shapes, forms. I've talked about them for years. I've had so much, because I think the reason why I'm Woolie, by the way. Hi, welcome. Thanks for listening. This is manic and it's all over the place, but the point is that I've had so much pent up in terms of trying to spit out ideas that I think are good ideas that are worth sharing. I think there's some cool things I have in mind. I've tried and failed to make comic books. I've tried and failed to make video games. I've tried and failed to make videos and movies and you name it. Every creative medium that I have any sort of interest in whatsoever, I have dabbled in and probably have some buried skeletons somewhere from trying. And I've gotten some things out there over the years, and the amount that has seen the light of day is like, it is a fraction of the things that don't. And a lot of that is based on different problems arising at different times. Sometimes it's not in my control. The overwhelming majority of the time, the problem is my own head and my inability to get out of it, and my inability to let things flow, just accept it as it is and make it, and just see what happens. Because I want things to go a certain way, and it's the stupidest, most basic thing that you're supposed to know over all these years, is to just let it rock and see where it goes, and then fix and correct and error correct. But if you obsess over where you're going to go and how you're going to target shoot and how you're going to hit that target, and you never actually take the shot, then, whatever, Michael Jordan, yada, 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 100% of the shots you don't take, etc. Like, it's just the most basic thing. And so I decided, I'm like, hey, I've taken just shots of many things. Many things haven't worked out. I still kind of want to tell some of those stories, or at the very least acknowledge them in some way, and get into some topics and things that I don't really otherwise have an avenue for. So let me make a podcast, because you know what? Well, the one thing I have done, one of the few I'm not very talented, but I have a few things that I figured out how to do just through sheer repetition over the years. And one of those things is podcasting, since I've been running, the Best Friend Cast for the last couple of years now. And it's generally gone off without anything exploding. That's not true. Things have exploded. Stages have collapsed around us. But nonetheless, it's been a pretty consistent drop every week. And so I've kind of decided that, hey, that probably means I think I know how to make a podcast. I'm pretty comfortable in those shoes. As of the recording of this right now, the 2nd of December, 2 days before my goddamn birthday, I'm basically sitting here trying to think again and again and again about how I'm going to structure this, how I'm going to format it, what the right way to angle it, what the right angle is going to be. Who should I talk to? Should I talk to anybody? Should it just be myself? I don't fucking know. And what I do know is that I have recorded things up until this point, and the things I've recorded up until this point have been with other people, and there's just different topics and ideas I had in mind, but I ultimately didn't really know how to string it all together. And I still don't really fucking know. The funny part about it is that the conversations I've had with people have been about failed projects. So I decided to grab some friends together at one point and talk about some failed things that never worked out, things that like we tried, things that they've tried. And, to sort of like just talk about the catharsis of getting it off your chest, hoping to somehow release it in some way, not actually make the thing, but, get the idea out there because you still kind of hold on to things a little bit too long whenever a project fails, but you kind of still think back and go, oh man, but the part that was super cool though, I'll never get to talk about that. We still do that. And, I decided that, one of the ways to help me sort of deal with this would be to talk to people about the ideas and just get them out there and even show off any assets that were spent, whatever it took to get something, to get a project going. Just release the failed work in an unseen 64 kind of way. And let people see what it was for the idea that you had. And then you can just move on with your life. It's a burden, released. It's a confessional, whatever you want to call it. It's the weight is off your shoulders. So that's kind of like a thought process for a single topic that I kind of had. And I was like, yeah, that seems like something. And I've got, I talk about how I've written a bunch of GDDs, game design documents, for example, if we're just talking about video games, for different, pitches for things that I would like, oh man, if I ever had fuck you money, like infinite wealth, I would just throw it all at this situation and make these games happen. And it'd be so great because it's fulfilling for the sake of just being someone that made this cool video game. Because boy, I sure do love those. I fucking then had the thought that, okay, this is something that is going to be limited to a certain amount, right? There's a time frame. You can only tackle this topic so many times. And you can even wrangle in certain amount of friends, but at the end of the day, like, that doesn't have a super lasting, it's not a super lasting subject matter. There's not a ton of legs on that. And so I start getting in my whole head about what, like, okay, what am I going to call it? Am I going to call it like a fail cast or a masterclass in failure or how to fail or just, like all these ideas and all these things about like, okay, what's the right way to angle that, right? And then I'm like, okay, but that's just one subject matter. What about something else? Because I've had other ideas and other things I wanted to make. I wanted to make a video series on my channel, Woolie Versus, that was going to be called Games I'll Never Make, but then I wrapped that into this podcast thing. And then I'm like, okay, but I also had a thought process for just like, I kind of want to do something like when we would do spoiler casts on the Super Best Friend cast. You just kind of pick a topic, get into it, and just go from top to bottom on what you thought of all these things in a given medium. Game show, movie, whatever the case is, and you just kind of run through it's almost like a review of sorts, right? And I was like, yeah, those are really interesting. I enjoy doing those. People tend to enjoy listening to them, but I even want to focus and zoom in more on specific details. I kind of want to pick apart a particular thing in a particular story and talk about why I think that works and why I think that's cool and go into detail on just that one thing. And that's something that I was like, okay, there's longevity there. There's an idea that you can carry over, and I have a lot to say. And then I'm like, but what if I just want to talk to somebody? What if I just want to sit down with someone that has something interesting to say on a given topic and just shoot the shit, go into that one thing or anything else. And I just get in my own goddamn head about it. And I don't know how to, and I'm rambling already, but the point is that like the process of making a show about how you fail at making things started to happen to the thing that was supposed to be about failing at making things. Like I literally started doing the exact same stupid thing to this podcast in itself, where weeks and then a month and then 2 months goes by and you're like, you've recorded some stuff, you've made the page, you've got the logo made, it's all sitting there ready to go, but you just don't know how to put it together, you don't know how to link it up, and you know that you only come out once, you only release once, there's only one moment, that's one debut, mom spaghetti, everything's all over, and you just kind of fall into this pattern. I fall into this pattern of self-sabotaging the same shit that I'm trying to talk about based on the past and other projects. What the fuck are you doing, dude? So I'm like, you know what? I'm sitting here and I'm just staring at like my socks and I'm like, just hit the fucking record button and see what happens. Figure it out as you go, right? I often talk about how stupid and busy my schedule is, and I saw someone talk about how people who have that, yeah, just do less shit. Commit to less shit. And I'm like, that's a really good thought process. I like that. But also I like a lot of things. And people are constantly introducing me to more things that I should check out or do or watch or get into. And it's, you get pulled a million ways, but regardless, just focusing on the only things I like, I don't have enough time to commit to any of them fully. So I have to just dip my toes in the water of all these things that I really wish I could go further in. And my typical week, day and night, is chock full of hobbies and bullshit, you know, like when I'm not recording LPs with the guys at Super Best Friends, or working on the podcast, I'm, you know, doing haka. I'm boxing 3 nights a week. I'm throwing in mandatory recording sessions. I'm throwing in, extra recording sessions for the Woolie Versus channel. I'm throwing in, stream nights and, I've recently started to try and like wake up earlier to just get a third slot into the day. And it's kind of like, it's getting really silly because it's also like, when do you have time to actually just live? You know, when do you have time to spend with like anybody, your friends, your girlfriend, people you care about, whoever, family, sure. And it's stupid. I'm awful at time management. I eventually settled on the idea that this podcast could basically be almost like summarized in collections, or at least it might be a neat and tidy way to do it. So if I wanted to talk about failed projects, there'd be a set number, and then at the end of that number of episodes about given failed projects that me or other people that I'm talking to have worked on, then that would be that collection, you know, almost like in a Dan Carlin hardcore history kind of way, where he puts out a number of podcasts talking about a particular subject in history, and then there's part 1, and then there's part 2, and you're set and you're done and that's it. I was like, yeah, it might be cool to do that, right? To pick a subject on failure, on this, on that, and then just kind of have a set amount. And if I have more to say, then I'll just revisit the topic, I suppose. Where are you going? What are you ultimately trying to accomplish here? I'm trying to just introduce the concept of what the point of this is. And I want to also, by just giving you a look at like what this ridiculous thought process is, perhaps set a tone in a way where I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know what the purpose of this is. It's probably a mistake, but I'm just going to write it out anyway and see what happens. And I'll, you know, I may just upload this and not even listen back to it. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. I think I'll run it through the quality checks to ultimately make sure that the sound is okay. But I don't think I'm going to listen back to this. I think I'm just going to save the file and just throw it up, because like I need to actually just get this out and not stop myself. I really wish I could kind of figure out where this habit came from. I feel as if, in post high school, when I got into, when I went into art in Cégep over here, which is basically like grade 12, 13, and first year college or so, in Montreal. The program that I picked was really intense. It threw an illegal course load at me, that was effectively the classes themselves. There were 14 classes in one semester. The legal course load limit, I believe at the time, was 9. So they essentially found ways to double up by having the same class listed on Tuesday and Thursday for a couple hours, but on both of those days, even though it's under the same name, you would walk in and see 2 separate teachers, get 2 sets of homework. Each one would grade you, and your final mark would be 50%, would be a 50 out of 50, and then they'd add them together to create a total score. It was insane. They circumvented the rules, and they just overwhelmed everybody, and it was madness. But that was the nature of the intense art program that I took. And I feel as if, like, I learned a lot of bad habits in that process. I learned to obsess over certain details. I learned to just get stuck in my own head in a lot of ways. I learned to not sleep. I was already a nighttime person. I was very nocturnal always, but that converted me into just a full-on, constant all-nighter type of person. I feel as if there's something that kind of broke at that point, and then the pieces got rebuilt into something else. You know, I'm looking at this like, do I even need to? No, I don't need to go much further. I think I've set it up. I think I've set up what this is going to be about. It's going to go a little bit longer usually, but I don't need to waste anyone else's time. This is an introduction. The story I always bring up is an article I read about a talk that was given at South by Southwest. And I feel like people who have heard me talk about creative ideas have heard me say this many times, but new format, new show, new podcast, new everything. So perhaps new listeners. The idea of this talk was essentially that when you talk about your ideas to people while you're working on them, it robs you of the motivation that you have to finish them. Because something that's supposed to actually drive you to finish what you're working on is I repeat this in the interviews that I have with my friends later on in the previous episode. So after this, you're going to hear me bring the story up again. But that was literally like months ago, because I sat on it for that long. That's how bad this is. To not interrupt myself, it robs you of the motivation you have to finish the project, because you tell someone about the cool thing, and then you didn't actually make the cool thing yet. So you just tell them about it, and you tell them about how cool it is and how perfect it would be, because you're giving them what you want them to interpret. And they would basically give you the feedback that an audience would right away, going, "Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's super cool. You've come up with a really good idea. How novel and unique." And I'm going to applaud, and it's going to be great. And you're just going to feel all that, like, warm, like, ooh, yeah. You're going to feel that nice feeling after telling someone about your cool thing. And then that feeling is going to suffice. And it'll take away the fire that you're supposed to have, where you're just like, God damn it, this sucks. I've been at this for hours. I'm staring at, like, this piece that I'm working at until 4 a.m. I'm looking at it, but I can't wait till it's done. Right? And that drive, that push, that thing that is, like, absolutely lighting a fire under your ass is the fact that no one's seen what you've suffered through, and you have to get it in someone's, like, hands eventually, because the desire to share it is just, like, it's painful almost, right? It's a brutal thing, but you're like, fuck, I have to show this to somebody. By getting some preemptive applause before you even accomplish anything, you rob yourself of the motivation to make the thing. So I've always had that in mind, and as a result, I tend to keep things close to the chest of sorts. And I even feel that, and I mean, I still think that's really great advice. I still think that's a really good thing, because I've seen myself fall into that, and I've become obsessed with that little talk because I've made that mistake for years. But it also means that after a project has completely fallen by the wayside, I still have that little flame inside that's like, oh man, boy, I sure hope one day something comes along that gives me the opportunity to bring this up, or at the very least, recycle this idea into some other format. And that's what effectively this podcast is. This is a recycling of the idea for games I'll never make. This is a recycling of me just wanting to shoot the shit with friends and with strangers that I'm going to hopefully have on this show. This is a recycling of me wanting to talk about the hype moments and things that are well directed and written and or illustrated or so. And who knows what other topics it will be. But for now, that's what's in my mind. And I'm just gonna hit the stop button now and then upload it. If you're one of those people that walks by a trash fire and decides, hey, let's not pour water on that. Let's get some more trash in there. Let's see where this goes. Let's see what's happening here. Then feel free, if you have an inkling, to subscribe by checking it out on iTunes or Spotify or SoundCloud. I'm probably going to also throw it up on Woolie Versus on YouTube as well. And pretty much anywhere podcasts are regularly found. Feel free to gawk and throw more trash onto the fire as it roars. And you know what? Fuck it. I had other names in mind, but for now, literally, let's just call it Woolie Will Figure It Out.